Hello everyone, and welcome back to Cowboys and Cattle. In our last episode, faced with the impossible choice between staying with 3 suffering horses and searching for the hidden prisoner, Ty chose to trust Amy with the mercy the animals needed while he pushed forward. As Morrison led him deeper into the facility, Ty's headache intensified, memories forcing themselves through damaged neural pathways, causing physical pain. When they reached a junction that Ty's memory insisted should have a 4th corridor, Morrison found a hidden passage behind false construction. As Ty stepped into the revealed corridor, the accumulated stress overwhelmed him and he collapsed. From the darkness ahead, a weak voice called, "Is someone there? Help?" Morrison's team found Daniel barely alive after 2 weeks without food or water, emaciated and dehydrated, but conscious. His first words asked for Ty, the man who'd promised to come back. Morrison confirmed. Ty had kept his promise. Daniel was saved. But Daniel's question sent chills through everyone. "Are there others? Other doors?" Morrison ordered a full sweep of the hidden corridor. If more prisoners existed, they needed to be found immediately. Ty, semi-conscious but aware, heard confirmation that his fragmented memory had been right. The promise was real, and it had been kept. If this journey has gripped you, please hit that like button and subscribe. Today's episode brings Ty face to face with the consequences of his Alaska mission. He came here to save a life, and he did. Daniel is alive because Ty refused to forget, refused to give up, refused to accept that some promises can't be kept. But every victory has its cost, and today, Ty will learn the price of his success. Sometimes keeping one promise means accepting you can't keep them all. Sometimes saving one life means witnessing the loss of others. And sometimes the hardest part of doing the right thing is living with everything you couldn't fix along the way. This is episode 87, and today Ty must face both the triumph and the tragedy of returning to his nightmare. Consciousness returned slowly to Ty, filtering in through layers of pain and confusion. His head throbbed with residual migraine. His body ached from hitting concrete when he collapsed. But beneath the physical discomfort was something else. Urgency. He'd been doing something important, looking for someone. Finding something. His eyes opened to fluorescent lights that made him wince. He was lying on a medical cot in what appeared to be a makeshift treatment area. Probably one of the facility's rooms converted for FBI medical use. Equipment beeped nearby. An IV line ran into his arm. And beside the cot, slumped in a chair with her head in her hands, was Amy. She looked up as Ty stirred. And he saw immediately that she'd been crying. Her eyes were red and puffy, her face showing the kind of emotional exhaustion that came from holding yourself together through something devastating.
"Ty, oh thank God."
She moved to his side immediately, her hand finding his, her relief palpable. But Ty's mind was still catching up, still trying to piece together what had happened after he collapsed.
"Amy? What? Where am I?"
"Still at the facility. You've been unconscious for about 2 hours. Dr. Foster said it was a combination of stress, migraine, and your body just shutting down from overload."
2 hours?
He tried to sit up, but his head spun violently. Amy's hand on his shoulder kept him from moving too quickly.
"Easy. You need to take it slow. Your blood pressure's still not stable."
But Ty couldn't take it slow. Memories were flooding back, the hidden corridor, the voice calling for help collapsing just inside the passage. His heart rate spiked, the monitor beside the bed reacting with faster beeping.
The voice. The person. Daniel. We have to find him. I have to go back.
He tried to swing his legs off the cot, but wobbled dangerously, his body not cooperating with his determination. Amy grabbed him, supporting his weight, preventing him from falling.
"Ty, stop. Where do you think you're going?"
The corridor. The metal doors. That person's been waiting for me for 2 years. I have to hurry before it's too late. Before they—
"Ty, listen to me. They found him."
The words stopped Tide of desperate movement. He turned to look at Amy, not daring to believe.
What?
"The FBI found him. Daniel. He was in the 3rd cell, just like you remembered. Morrison and his team got him out while you were unconscious."
Is he alive?"
Amy's expression showed both relief and concern.
"He's alive. Barely. They have him in emergency medical care right now. Ty, he hadn't had any food or water for 2 weeks. Since the facility was shut down, Dr. Foster says another few days, and he wouldn't have made it. But you got us here in time. You saved his life.
The words hit Ty with physical force. He'd done it. Despite the memory erasure, he'd kept his promise. He'd come back for Daniel and found him alive. Tears filled Ty's eyes, spilling over before he could stop them. His entire body began shaking, not from fear or pain, but from overwhelming relief and emotion. Amy wrapped her arms around him, holding him while he broke down.
I didn't think. I was so afraid he'd be dead, that I'd be too late.
But he didn't. He survived because he believed you'd come back, and you did. You kept your promise, Ty.
They held each other while Ty cried, all the stress and fear and guilt of the past days releasing in racking sobs. Amy cried too, her relief for Daniel mixing with her own emotional exhaustion from everything she'd witnessed in the facility. Finally, Ty's tears subsided enough for him to speak.
Can I see him? Can I talk to Daniel?
Not yet. He's in critical condition. They're stabilizing him for emergency medical transport. As soon as he's stable enough, they're flying him to Anchorage for intensive care. 2 weeks without food or water did severe damage. But Ty, he's going to make it. The doctors think he'll recover.
Did they find anyone else? In the other cells?
Amy's expression darkened slightly.
They checked every door in that corridor. Daniel was the only one. The other cells were empty. Some looked like they'd been used before but were abandoned. Morrison thinks Nathan moved most prisoners before the facility was raided. Daniel was left behind, maybe forgotten. Maybe Nathan couldn't reach him before the FBI closed in.
So Daniel was alone in there.
And you found him. That's what matters.
Ty nodded slowly, his head still throbbing but his heart lighter than it had been since arriving in Alaska. He'd accomplished what he came here to do. Found the person his damaged memory insisted existed. Kept a promise made in darkness and stolen by chemicals. Then another thought occurred to him. Another promise Amy had made while he searched.
The horses. The 3 that couldn't be moved. Did Dr. Mitchell?
He couldn't finish the question, but Amy understood what he was asking. Her expression, which had been showing relief, suddenly shifted to something more complicated. Sadness mixed with quiet resignation.
They're gone, Ty. All 3 of them.
The words landed like a physical blow. Ty's breath caught in his throat.
All 3? But I thought there might be time to...
There wasn't. Dr. Mitchell assessed them after you left to search for Daniel. Their conditions were deteriorating rapidly. The one with respiratory issues could barely breathe. The skeletal case was having catastrophic joint failures, and the neurological case was having constant seizures, one after another, barely any time between them.
She took Ty's hand, her voice gentle but firm.
Dr. Mitchell said keeping them alive any longer would have been cruel. So we made the decision. We euthanized all 3, peacefully, without pain. I was with them the entire time. They weren't alone.
Ty felt like the air had been knocked out of his lungs. He'd known this was the likely outcome, had known the horses were too damaged to save, but hearing it confirmed that they were gone. That while he was saving Daniel's life, 3 other lives had ended, hit harder than he'd expected.
I should have been there. I should have been with them.
You were saving Daniel. You couldn't be in 2 places at once.
But those horses... Amy, I knew them. I worked with them for years. I was there when they were born. I watched them grow up suffering because of mutations I helped create. And at the end, I wasn't even there to say goodbye.
His voice broke on the last word. Amy pulled him closer, holding him while fresh tears fell.
You said goodbye before you left to search for Daniel. You stood in front of those stalls and you promised you'd minimize their suffering. And we did that. Dr. Mitchell and I made sure they went peacefully, made sure they felt safe, made sure they didn't suffer any more than they already had.
Tell me about it. Please, I need to know what happened.
Amy took a shaky breath, clearly reliving the difficult moments.
We started with the respiratory case. He was suffering the most. Every breath was agony. Dr. Mitchell administered the sedative first. He relaxed immediately like he'd been holding tension for years and finally could let it go. Then the final injection. He just went to sleep. No pain, no struggle, just peace.
She paused, wiping her own tears.
The skeletal case went next. She was watching. I think she knew what was happening, but she didn't fight it. When Dr. Mitchell approached with the sedative, she actually leaned into the touch, like she was ready, like she'd been waiting for someone to grant her permission to stop fighting.
And the neurological case?
She was the hardest. The seizures made it difficult to administer the medication safely. We had to wait for a break between seizures, but when it came, she looked at me, really looked at me, and I swear I saw relief in her eyes, like she understood we were helping her.
Amy's voice was thick with emotion.
Dr. Mitchell said she'd never seen animals so ready to let go, like they'd been fighting for so long and finally someone was telling them it was okay to stop, that they'd done enough, that they could rest now.
Ty pressed his hands to his face, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. 3 lives ended while he was saving another. 3 animals he'd known intimately, whose suffering he'd tried to minimize for years, gone while he was unconscious in another part of the facility.
Dr. Mitchell was incredibly gentle. The sedatives worked quickly, and the final injections were peaceful. They just drifted off, like falling asleep after being exhausted for too long.
Ty lowered his hands, staring at nothing, processing the weight of what Amy was telling him.
The horses. They were beyond just their mutations.
Ty took a shuddering breath, his mind traveling back through years of forced captivity and the animals he'd cared for despite the circumstances. Ty shifted on the medical cot, Dr. Foster appearing briefly to check his vitals, but then giving him and Amy privacy when she saw they were deep in conversation. Ty's voice was quiet, reflective, as he began sharing memories he'd kept buried.
The respiratory case. The first one you euthanized. His name was Storm. At least that's what I called him. Nathan didn't believe in naming them. Said it created emotional attachment that interfered with scientific objectivity. But I named them anyway, in my head, as a way to remember they were individuals, not just experiments.
Storm, that's a good name.
He was born during a thunderstorm. Literally, Nathan had me monitoring a mare in active labor during the worst electrical storm I'd ever seen in Alaska. Lightning striking so close the whole facility shook, and in the middle of it, Storm was born.
His expression softened with the memory, despite the sadness.
He should have died. The respiratory mutations were obvious from birth. His first breath was a struggle. Every breath after was a struggle. Nathan wanted to euthanize him immediately. Said he was too damaged to provide useful data, but I convinced him to let me try to save the foal. Said we could learn more from managing the condition than from autopsy data.
You saved his life. Then,
for 2 years I kept him alive. Developed breathing treatments, oxygen therapy protocols, medication schedules, and for a while Storm had a decent quality of life. He could move around his stall, could eat, could interact with the other horses. He wasn't happy. How could he be? Living here, but he wasn't in constant agony.
His voice dropped.
But after Nathan took me to Montana, after I wasn't here to manage his care anymore, Storm's condition deteriorated. The protocols I developed required consistent implementation. Without me here, whoever replaced me didn't follow them properly, and Storm suffered for it.
That's not your fault. You were kidnapped, memory erased, held captive. You couldn't have done anything differently.
I know, but it doesn't change that Storm's last 2 years were worse than they should have been. And now he's gone, and I wasn't even there at the end to tell him I was sorry, that I tried, that he deserved so much better than what Nathan's greed gave him.
Amy squeezed Ty's hand, letting him continue at his own pace.
The skeletal case. Her name was Echo. I called her that because when she moved, her hooves made this distinctive sound against the concrete, louder than the other horses because of her bone density modifications. Like her presence echoed through the whole facility.
He smiled slightly at the memory before the sadness returned.
Echo was different from Storm. She wasn't born suffering. For the first 6 months of her life, she seemed fine. The bone density mutations took time to cause problems. Nathan was actually pleased with her at first. Thought he'd finally succeeded in creating a horse with enhanced structural strength without complications.
But the complications came.
By the time she was a year old, her joints were failing under the weight of her own skeleton. Every step caused pain, and unlike Storm, where I could manage the symptoms, There was nothing I could do for Echo, except try to minimize her discomfort. The damage was structural, permanent, irreversible.
His voice became strained.
Echo was the one that made me stop cooperating with Nathan. I'd been complying for 3 years, working on the breeding programs, developing the mutations, monitoring the animals, all because Nathan threatened my family. But watching Echo suffer, knowing I'd helped create her, knowing there was no fix, that's when I couldn't do it anymore. I told Nathan I was done, that he could threaten me all he wanted, but I wouldn't participate in creating more suffering animals.
And that's when the torture got worse.
That's when everything got worse. Nathan didn't take refusal well, and Echo, she lived another year after that. Suffering, because I couldn't save her and couldn't end her misery. And now she's finally at peace, 2 years later than she should have been.
Ty's tears were flowing freely now. Years of suppressed grief finally finding release.
And the third one, the neurological case. Her name was Luna. I met her at night. I'd started sneaking out of my cell whenever I could, trying to find ways to sabotage Nathan's operation. And one night, I found a new foal in the breeding facility. Must have been born while I was locked up for refusing to cooperate. She was maybe 3 days old, and she was already showing signs of neurological problems. Tremors, uncoordinated movements, confused responses.
He stared at his hands, remembering.
I should have walked away. Should have let Nathan deal with her. But I couldn't. She was just a baby. Suffering because of mutations someone, maybe even me, months before had engineered into her genetics. So I started sneaking out every night to care for her. Developed treatments in secret, stole medications from Nathan's supply, did everything I could to give Luna a chance.
You cared for her even when you were actively trying to sabotage the operation.
I couldn't let an innocent animal suffer because of my rebellion against Nathan. That wasn't Luna's fault. She didn't ask to be born with a brain that couldn't properly control her body, so I took care of her. For months. Until Nathan caught me during one of my nighttime visits.
His expression darkened.
That's when Nathan realized I'd still help with the animals, even if I wouldn't help with the breeding programs. So he started using that against me. Said if I didn't cooperate, he'd stop providing care for horses like Luna, would let them suffer without treatment, without pain management, without anything.
He used your compassion as a weapon.
For another year, that's how it worked. I'd refuse to do breeding work. Nathan would threaten to withhold care from specific animals, and I'd eventually cave. It was torture, being forced to choose between my principles and the suffering of animals who hadn't done anything wrong.
He looked at Amy, his expression showing the full weight of those impossible choices.
The last time I saw Luna was 2 days before my second escape attempt. I'd been planning it for weeks, and I went to her stall to say goodbye, told her I was going to escape and bring help, that I'd rescue all the animals, that I'd get her somewhere she could be properly cared for.
His voice broke. But
I promised her, just like I promised Daniel. And then Nathan caught me, and I was taken to Montana, and my memory was erased, and Luna spent 2 more years suffering without proper care. 2 more years of seizures and confusion and pain, because I broke my promise to her.
Ty, you didn't break your promise. You tried. You almost succeeded, and then Nathan stopped you in the most brutal way possible.
But Luna didn't know that. She just knew the person who'd been caring for her stopped coming, stopped treating her seizures, stopped making the pain bearable. From her perspective, I abandoned her.
he pressed his hands to his face again, the grief overwhelming.
And now all 3 of them are gone. Storm and Echo and Luna. All the animals I'd named, cared for, tried desperately to save. They're all gone, and I saved Daniel, but I couldn't save them.
Amy moved from her chair to sit on the edge of the medical cot, pulling Ty into a tight embrace. They sat like that for long minutes, both crying, both processing the complicated reality of victory and loss, intertwined.
You gave them peace. Maybe not when you wanted to. Maybe not in the way you wanted. But Ty, you led us here. Without you, we wouldn't have found this facility. Those 27 horses we transported, they're alive because of you. And Storm, Echo, and Luna, they're finally free from suffering because of you. You did save them, just not in the way you imagined.
It doesn't feel like saving. It feels like failure.
Because you're a good man who wanted to fix everything. But some things can't be fixed. Some damage is too deep, and recognizing that, accepting that mercy sometimes means letting go. That's not failure. That's compassion.
Ty pulled back slightly, wiping his eyes. He wanted to visit their stall for the last time. Amy helped Ty stand, supporting his weight as they made their way out of the medical area and back toward the breeding facility. The walk felt longer than Ty remembered, his body weak and protesting. But he pushed through the discomfort. As they entered the breeding facility, the emptiness hit immediately. Most of the horses had been transported out. The sounds of animals that had filled the space before were reduced to just a few remaining presents, horses waiting for their turn in the transport schedule. At the far end, in the specialized stalls, 3 spaces stood empty. The doors were open, the stalls had been cleaned. No evidence remained of the animals who'd suffered and died there except for the memories Ty carried. Goodbye to Storm, Echo, and Luna. Ty approached the first stall slowly, Amy beside him, but giving him space for this private moment. This had been Storm's stall. The horse with respiratory issues who'd been born during a thunderstorm and fought for every breath for 2 years. Ty placed his hand on the stall door, closing his eyes, remembering. Storm's first successful breathing treatment. The way the horse had leaned into Ty's touch during examinations. The grateful look in Storm's eyes when medications eased the struggle to breathe, even temporarily.
I'm sorry I wasn't here at the end, Storm. I'm sorry you suffered. But you're free now. No more struggling to breathe. No more pain. Just peace. I hope wherever you are, you can finally take an easy breath.
He moved to the second stall, Echo's stall. The horse, whose heavy hoofsteps had echoed through the facility, announcing her presence even when she couldn't be seen.
Echo, you were the one who made me stop. Made me realize I couldn't keep participating in creating suffering, no matter what Nathan threatened. You changed everything. And I'm sorry that change came too late to save you. I'm sorry you lived a year longer than you should have. Carrying weight your body was never meant to bear.
His voice cracked.
But you don't have to carry it anymore. You can rest now. The pain is over. And maybe wherever you are, you can finally move without it hurting. Can finally run the way you were meant to run. If Nathan hadn't destroyed your body with his greed.
The third stall, Luna's stall. The foal he'd found by moonlight and cared for in secret, whose suffering had been weaponized against him, whose trust he'd been forced to betray. Ty's legs gave out slightly, and Amy caught him, helping him lean against the stall door. He pressed his forehead against the metal, tears streaming down his face.
Luna, I'm sorry for what you've been through.
His voice became a whisper.
But I hope in some way you knew I didn't abandon you on purpose. That I fought as hard as I could to keep my promise. That I thought about you, even when I couldn't consciously remember you. Some part of me was trying to get back here, to save you, to give you the life you deserved.
He slid down to sit on the floor in front of Luna's empty stall, Amy sitting beside him, holding him while he grieved.
And now you're free. No more seizures. No more confusion. No more wondering why your body won't work right. Just peace, Luna. Finally, peace.
They sat like that for a long time. Ty mourned for 3 horses who'd never had a chance, who'd suffered their entire lives because of genetic manipulations they hadn't asked for, who'd trusted him to help them, and died while he was saving someone else. Morrison appeared at the entrance to the breeding facility, hesitating when he saw Ty and Amy on the floor. But he approached anyway, his expression showing respect for Ty's grief. Ty, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to update you on Daniel. Ty looked up, wiping his eyes, trying to pull himself together.
Is he okay?
He's stable enough for transport. We're loading him onto the helicopter now for emergency flight to Anchorage. He's asking for you, wants to see you before we leave.
He does?
Says he. Needs to thank the person who kept his promise. The person who came back for him. Ty looked at Amy, then back at the 3 empty stalls, then at Morrison. The person he'd saved wanted to see him, while he sat here grieving the animals he couldn't save. The duality of it was almost too much to process. Victory and loss, success and failure, promises kept and promises broken. all of it tangled together in a way that made his chest feel like it was being crushed.
Go. See Daniel. Say goodbye before he's transported. The horses, Ty, they're at peace now. They don't need you anymore. But Daniel does. He needs to know his faith in you was justified, that believing you'd come back wasn't foolish hope.
Ty nodded slowly, allowing Amy to help him stand. His legs were steadier now, his body adjusting to being vertical again. But his heart felt heavy with the weight of everything that had happened in this facility. They walked toward the exit, Ty casting one last look back at the 3 empty stalls. 3 lives ended. 3 animals, finally free from suffering. 3 promises he'd tried to keep, but ultimately could only fulfill through mercy rather than salvation. But ahead, outside, Daniel waited. 1 life saved. 1 promise kept in exactly the way Ty had intended. 1 person who'd believed and been proven right. It had to be enough, because it was all Ty had accomplished. 1 life saved at the cost of 3 lost. 1 victory measured against 3 defeats. 1 promise kept against 3 that had been broken. As they stepped outside into the cold Alaskan air, Ty prepared himself to face the person he'd saved while carrying the grief for the animals he couldn't. Sometimes doing the right thing meant living with everything you couldn't fix. And sometimes the price of keeping 1 promise was accepting all the others you'd failed. That concludes today's episode. Ty woke up confused and desperate to continue searching for the person he'd promised to rescue. Amy stopped him with news that shattered through his panic. The FBI found Daniel. He was alive. Barely 2 weeks without food or water had brought him to death's edge, but alive and being stabilized for emergency transport. Ty had kept his promise. Relief overwhelmed him until he asked about the 3 horses. Amy's face changed as she delivered the devastating news. All 3 were gone, euthanized while Ty was unconscious. Their suffering had escalated too rapidly to wait. Dr. Mitchell and Amy had made the merciful choice. Peaceful deaths without pain. But Ty hadn't been there to say goodbye to animals he'd known intimately. Grief consumed him as he asked Amy to tell him what happened, and then he shared his own memories. Storm, the respiratory case born in a thunderstorm, whose every breath was a struggle. Echo, the skeletal case, whose suffering made Ty stop cooperating with Nathan's operation. Luna, the neurological case he'd found as a foal and cared for in secret, whose trust had been weaponized against him. 3 animals he'd named, loved, tried desperately to save. All gone while he was saving Daniel. Ty went to their empty stalls to say goodbye, grieving promises he'd tried to keep but could only fulfill through mercy rather than salvation. Morrison interrupted to say Daniel wanted to see Ty before being transported, wanted to thank the person who'd kept his promise. As Ty prepared to meet the man he'd saved, he carried the grief for the 3 he couldn't. 1 life saved at the cost of 3 lost. Sometimes doing the right thing means living with everything you couldn't fix. Join us next time as Ty faces Daniel and begins the journey home carrying both victory and loss. If this episode broke your heart with impossible choices and bittersweet outcomes, please like and subscribe. Until next time, this is Cowboys and Cattle.